The story of our faith is powerful because it helps shape the way that we see ourselves, others, and the world. When God's story resonates with our story, we find life, peace, and wholeness in ways that can't easily be replicated. And when we share our stories of resonance with others, they are blessed as their lives are impacted. This year at Bethlehem, we have been inviting people to share their stories of resonance. And today we have yet another story. I am grateful that Josh Bauer is willing to be vulnerable and share how God's story has resonated with his. This is Josh Bauer's story.
Hi, my name is Josh Bauer. I'm a business and marketing teacher at Sauk Rapids Rice High School. I get the privilege to tell you today just a small snippet of my story. Before I begin, I think it's important to note that I fully know and understand that my story is that as a teacher, we all have challenges in our places of employment. You know, as a matter of fact, I wasn't always a teacher. Even though I had a high school teacher pull me aside near the end of my career and say, you know what, you should become a teacher, I said, no way. I want to make a lot of money and I want to wear fancy clothes. I then, 6 years later, had a college professor tell me I should add an additional degree and become a high school teacher as I was really good at tutoring the younger economics students. To which I responded, it took me 6 years to get a 4-year degree. I don't think so. I'm never going to school again. So I would spend some time doing financial planning and taxes. I've joined the Minnesota Army National Guard, and then I'd spend 6 years in trucking operations. The reality is, in none of this I found very much fulfillment. As a matter of fact, I would find myself angry and sad as I left work. It was in dark times as my frustration, my occupation would start to affect my personal life. I did love watching my wife teach and put on her concerts. Her enthusiasm and energy was simply infectious with her students. She had many times where she would tell me what a great teacher I would have made. God planted seeds in these former mentors that would begin to sprout. The plant would eventually grow, and one day I was at an absolute low in my occupation. I heard a radio commercial at lunch while I was taking a nap in the back of my car that said, hey, get a master's degree in teaching and get your teaching license along the way. I would propose this to my wife and she'd fully support me and take a leap of faith to change career. There were a few hurdles that concerned me. One, money. We knew I'd have to go without pay for student teaching. We knew I'd make a lot less money. Two, time. We had one kid and we had another one on the way. It was going to take a lot of time to go through school. Although I felt called for it, so we went for it. God provided every step of the way through our 1 year of living on one teacher's salary. I was able to pick up some substitute teaching jobs, and literally out of nowhere a sum of money arrived in our mailbox that would cover several months of expenses. I couldn't believe it. We were truly blessed. I would graduate in December of 2013. It was a great time to look for a teaching job. Note the sarcasm. Middle year is not a great time to find a full-time teaching job. I applied for a job which was an hour away that would last me through the end of March. I didn't get the job, although the principal approached me and said, hey, you know, there's 3 weeks before the other guy can start that lives in town here. Any chance you could help me out? I thought to myself, geez, how stupid is that? I get to drive 2 hours round trip each way to make the same amount of money I can make 5 minutes down the road. But I agreed, and this principal would come observe me. He would write me a letter of recommendation, even make a call to Sauk Rapids Rice High School, and he asked me if I had applied anywhere else. That call and those experiences found me a full-time job on February 1st of that year. I couldn't believe it. I had a job from February 1st to the end of the school year. I would now have money for the rest of the year and for the summer. That job would be in alternative education, so I'd spend the next 2.5 years in alternative education. The main goal of this program was to help students recover credits. They were juniors and seniors that had failed many, many classes. The students oftentimes had other social and emotional baggage and academic needs. As a child of a single parent myself, and I grew up with very little, I was able to oftentimes empathize with these students. I made it my goal to show these students that they could create their own path in life and that anything was possible. I found some immediate success, and other times I just felt like I failed. I would then make a jump and teach in our business department, where I would get a chance to teach economics and marketing. I was also excited about this jump as it would be a chance to teach one of our largest programs in our school in DECA. DECA is a competition-paced business and marketing program. We would also run the school store and concession stands at night. I love being busy, so it was a perfect fit. I love the high levels of energy and the highly successful program. It was, over the next 6 years, I would watch it continue to thrive and grow. In February of 2020, our DECA program was so big we took over 150 kids to the district competition. We had many of those qualify for state competition in March of 2020, and we had 34 of those qualify for our national competition. This was one of the most successful years ever. It was so fun and so exciting. It would all come to a screeching halt just 3 days later. National DECA would be canceled. There was sadness and tears. This is a culminating, memorable experience for students that would not happen in 2020. A couple days later, school would be shut down for what was supposed to be a short period, but it turned to the entire spring. Teachers would scramble to find ways to try to teach online. Students would scramble to try to find ways to learn online and deal with other social stresses of isolation from their friends and their teachers. I personally struggled as a teacher not seeing my students every day. I missed their smiling faces as many started hiding behind the black screens of Zoom. I tried my hardest to make online learning engaging, but I felt like I was failing at every turn. My content seemed stale, and my dad jokes were just simply lost in the internet. Teachers were trying our hardest to reach out and meet our students, but it never seemed like it was quite enough. It wasn't the same. The summer of 2020 would arrive and the school year would end. I cried as I watched online graduation, but was excited at the thought of a fresh start in the fall. At the same time, my wife and I, who would deal with our own house problems, would cut ourselves off from the outside world. Some of this was kind of good, and some was very tough. The fall and the winter of 2020-2021 school year was no better. It was actually more difficult. Students were in and out of quarantine, hybrid learning, had some learning at home and some learning in person. There was the fear of the unknown of COVID and what effects it might have on myself and my family. There was a constant wondering if we would end up in distance learning. We all know the story, we would. When students were in the building, they were unhappy as they were cut off from certain friends. There were questions about sporting events, homecoming, proms, and all those fun things we do to provide our students at school. Staff was also frustrated as we were cut off from our colleagues to ensure that we weren't spreading COVID to others in our building. There was also a growing division in the community amongst the handling of COVID. Students are now bringing these divisions to school. It was just no fun. Not only was it no fun, but I was left worrying, was I doing enough? Was I being effective? Was I really connecting with both my in-person students and my virtual students? I was trying really hard for virtual DECA, but was that fun? I was putting more effort, but it never felt like enough. I often went home defeated and frustrated. I started questioning if I was in the right profession. At some low points, I even found myself looking for other jobs online. The spring of 2020 would bring hopes of a vaccine that would bring us back to normalcy. We hosted a large in-person graduation. It was good to see the kids smiling again. After a long and stressful year, I ran for the doors that summer. There was some hope. Our family summer was good. After a year of extreme isolation, my wife and I would start to host small groups at our family home. We would get a chance to socialize again. The fall of 2021 would bring us back to in-person learning, no mask, and less stringent quarantine rules. The staff would once again return to in-person meetings. It was good to see my colleagues again. The only problem is that I was changed. I was used to a slower pace. I wasn't used to having concessions at night, selling 1,700 homecoming shirts in a week, running the school store, having 1,400 students in the building, and in-person DECA trips. I simply felt overwhelmed at times. The last 18 months had changed some students as well. Some forgot how to do school in person. Kids weren't used to staying in a classroom each and every day. Cell phone usage was running rampant. Teachers were complaining of behaviors they hadn't seen before. I could also tell that students missed the connections with teachers. My room constantly had and still has kids in it, which of course part of me loves. They wanted to tell me stories, connect, listen to problems. I simply didn't feel like there was enough of me to get my job done. There were still divisions in the community over COVID and school protocols. It felt very negative at times. As the year progressed, so did the number of students out for flu, or for COVID, or for trips for long periods of time. It's so hard to catch them up sometimes. Staffing issues became real for similar reasons. Then there were social media threats mixed all into this that were happening at schools. We even had one specific against our school which would cause a day off. All this created a great deal of anxiety for a staff that was already stretched to the brink. We thought this year was better, and yet in many ways it was harder. So you're probably wondering, if your job's so difficult, why don't you quit teaching? And I said, well, God has placed many reminders over the last couple years to lift me up and to remind me why I'm in teaching. Last year I was nominated and won a statewide Teacher of the Year award. I ran into students at grad parties over the summer who greeted me with big hugs and thank you messages. I received texts of excitement over wedding engagements, successes in job offers, college admissions excitement, and thank you messages for teaching good writing and presentation skills. I even had a student buy me a Diet Mountain Dew over the year and thank me for being a great teacher. I had many past students come in over break and visit to say hi. I also ran into several former alternative ed students this past summer. One was so excited to see me. He stood in the middle of the patio we were at and publicly thanked me out loud for changing his life to make him feel like the impossible task of having a good paying job, a wife, and a house were all possible for him at the age of 24. There's so many more examples I could share. Every time I'm at a low, God seems to provide one to lift me up. Some are small, some are big. Some I hear about, and some I never will. I keep chugging along because I'm reminded my job is to keep planting seeds, even when it is difficult and I don't immediately see them growing.